The hill was taller than she remembered, and steeper, the small trail running up its side half buried and forgotten. She wondered just how Cowell knew about it. She had never included it in any of her creations before, so there was no way he could have seen it. "Getting a little out of breath?" Cowell asked, threatening to pass her. She glared at him. "Physical activity is not really my thing." "Nor mine, frankly, but I'm just so positively giddy about what comes next." "Is it a Dairy Queen?" she asked. "It better be a Dairy Queen for all this work But she fell off as she crested the top of the hill, for there, on the other side, was someone that she never thought she would ever see again. "Ruby," she breathed as the pitch-black German shepherd bounded up to meet her, fixing on her with her wolf-like eyes. The dog circled her once, and she held out her hand for her to sniff, as was polite. She then rubbed her behind the ears, setting her metal-linked collar jingling as she made small German shepherd grunts of approval. "Why did you put my dead dog here?" she asked, turning to Cowell. He just laughed. "You keep assuming I've done all this." "Well, there's no one else who could have," she stated simply. Meanwhile, Ruby had taken a few steps down the hill before turning back to make sure she was following. "Are you coming?" she asked, as Cowell didn't move. "Afraid not," he said. "This is the part of the road trip that you have to make alone." She hesitated, then followed Ruby down the hill. She noticed how gray her muzzle had become. She struggled up the stairs a little. But here was her room, sky blue and filled with light, but she only really remembered one. This one. That had been the day she realized that Ruby was going to die. She'd experienced death before, but not like this. Not so close. Grand fantasy worlds in the making. And there were her parents and the endless a long time ago. Ruby got sick and just never got better. Her mother would tell her later how many countless hours she had sat and read with that dog. "Okay, Luna," she said, and the enormous dog jumped upwards before plopping down on the end of the bed and laying her muzzle on her legs as if to protect her. She laid there with Ruby, felt her chest heave in and out with every labored breath. When she next looked up, her brain ceased to function. There was her home. It was now dark outside, and an old Disney movie was stopped in the VHS player, the screen on the old box TV blue. There she was, using her pudgy hands to help her dad stir the concrete and put the stones in place, and there she was as well, walking along the top barefoot, balancing on the long, rounded wall of concrete with a practiced eye. A table was on the deck, and then it wasn't, only vaguely, distantly. Ruby licked her hand then, and as she looked down to watch the dog lead her upstairs, she had cried when her parents had replaced it with an ugly red one. She had never been good with change. "Hey, kid!" came a voice back from the kitchen. 1 minute the deck in the front was new and wooden, the next the blue paint was faded, and stone walkways surrounded by sprouting hedges led down to it. "What's the most important ingredient in popcorn? Butter," she responded. She approached the screen door, but had trouble getting a hold of the handle as it changed several times. But she didn't see any of that now. Only Ruby as she struggled and flopped heavily down on the futon. She sat down next to her, the one she had known for most of her life. But something was wrong. A gray cat plopped down from the windowsill to be let in, as did an orange one with a broken tail that curled around its backside like a pig's. Ruby waited patiently behind as a lighter dog pushed ahead of her, eager to be out of the summer heat. Her bed, and now she was older and furiously scribbling words down long after the light should have been out. A whine came from the door, and the black and tan dog, the new dog, pushed the door open as she pulled aside the blankets, doors that she had run through in a circle over and over again during her many games with herself. The old couch sat in the living room, just big enough for the three of them. She looked over, and Ruby seemed almost satisfied. She seemed more stiff, heavier, as she barked hoarsely and led her back to it automatically. Then it was another night, and she was crying to her mother's chest. Posters appeared on the walls one by one until you could hardly see the paint at all anymore. Visions of running around with fake wooden swords and costumes danced before her eyes. Now the same room was strewn with blankets and pillows and the old futon as she and her friends held a Harry Potter movie marathon. The end of the first movie still wigged her out, but she didn't say anything. They turned to the right now, to the back office with the desk and computer in the corner. My. She remembered sitting at that desk for countless hours. The dog knew that she was going to die too. She kept trying to walk off in the middle of the night to die, but arthritic hips would never carry her far, and her father would carry her back inside. Ah, yes. She remembered what it was like to have friends. There was silence for a long while, and then she felt a hand on her shoulder. She looked up. Her 6th-grade boyfriend had broken up with her, and she didn't think she'd ever be happy again. Now her mother was filming her at 2 as she fell backwards into a bucket of toys, playing games as a child, doing schoolwork for the brief 2 years she'd homeschooled, and watching videos and writing as she got older. She was old enough to understand that it was for the best that they put her down. It was better than leaving her in pain, but it still hurt just the same. She felt the tears roll off her face and land on Ruby's fur, a hand on her flank, reading a book as the old dog slept. One winter, the inside was even worse. She'd forgotten how much her home had changed in the past 18 years. The kitchen and book towel, holding a red wooden box, the one that had sat on a shelf amongst pictures of her family ever since April of the 5th grade. Blinking, she took it from him and sat up. He plopped down next to her, and the two sat there for a moment, staring off into nothing. "Why did you show me this?" she asked finally, looking down at the box. "To remind you," he said. "Remind me of what?" "That my childhood wasn't all sunshine and rainbows and I shouldn't keep trying to hang on to it." "Took the words right out of my mouth. So, looks like it worked then." She sighed. "Just because I'm aware of something doesn't mean I can actually wrap my head around it." "Well, that's what the box is for," he beamed. "You're not a child anymore. There's no going back to that. But you've always got your memories," Cal rapped on the top of the box, "with you. Now, shall we move on?" He stood and offered a hand down to her. "There's a lot more to see." She took it and followed him up, and together the two walked out of the ruins that she had been standing in all along, off towards whatever was waiting ahead.